My name is Frederick Stamps, and I am a school teacher in Oregon. I'm going to Ukraine again this summer, 2024, to deliver humanitarian aid to Ukrainians displaced by the war. I'll also be conducting research into how the war is affecting individuals in the deaf community in Ukraine and influencing Ukrainian Sign Language. For the purpose of humanitarian aid, I am raising money. All of the money that I will raise will go directly to help Ukrainians displaced by the war. I'll pay for my own travel expenses. I'm going to be working with some of the nonprofit organizations that I've worked with in the past, namely Hope Across Borders, Reach Humanity, and probably World Central Kitchen as well. They do a lot of good, World Central Kitchen. So yeah, please donate if you can. Also, if you're in a position where you can sponsor or host Ukrainians, feel free to reach out to me. I can connect you to people who can help you with that. Or if you'd like to go to Europe yourself and volunteer, I can help you. I can connect you with people in Europe as well. But first, let me recap what we did our last 2 summers, our last 2 trips, service trips to Ukraine. First, we went to this store in Poland and bought more than $1,200 worth of food, which we drove in this rental van to the Ukrainian border, where we met up with these Ukrainians. And in this church, we boxed up the food for delivery to individual families in eastern Ukraine. Here's a picture of the last of the food. I didn't think to take a picture until we were done boxing it up. Then we took this mother and daughter shopping for tools so that the mother could work in Poland. Then we drove this family of 3 hours to the border. Then we started serving daily at one particular refugee center, and the first task they asked us to do was take this group of teenagers swimming. The next day, they asked us to bring this group of 32 swimming. The volunteers running the refugee center we were serving at also asked us to teach English classes, which we started doing so daily. But first, we needed to renovate the classroom. Here is my son helping prepare the classroom for English classes. The refugee center was in an abandoned shopping mall. Until I found a whiteboard, I used the windows of the storefront to write on during English classes. We also took this group of 34 to a nearby aviation museum, and we got a projector to start showing movies in Russian since we couldn't find any in Ukrainian. My daughter also volunteered at a free clothing store for the Ukrainians, and we also handed out some clothes that we brought over from the United States. My kids helped set up equipment for a field day for the children to play outside. We took this group of teenagers on a walking tour of the city, and then we got sidelined for a week because of COVID. Coming back from COVID, we took this group swimming. We also helped out where we could with World Central Kitchen, which has now served over 250 million meals since the start of the war. As requested, we also took groups of kids to a nearby lake for swimming a few times. And then we received word that the refugee center where we were serving at was to be shut down. This is when having a 9-passenger rental van really came in handy. We started transporting families and lots of luggage all over the place. I didn't get pictures of every van load that we transported, but this is one of the families that we drove to a new refugee center. We drove these guys to a refugee center about an hour east of the city, and we drove this guy's family to the same refugee center, but I forgot to get a picture of the rest of his family. These boys' mom entrusted them with all the family possessions and sent them with us to bring the luggage to their new refugee center. We transported these 2 families to a 3rd new refugee center, and we transported this family from Kharkiv to a 4th new refugee center. This is one of 3 gentlemen that we took in a van load to that same refugee center, and this family asked us to transport them to a bus station. The same as I did on several other occasions, I gave this grandmother some money before we said goodbye. We helped this young lady's family move into an apartment. There were a few families that were fortunate enough to be able to move into apartments of their own, but I didn't get pictures of all of them. We transported this young man to a train station so he could go visit his mother in the hospital. And I don't remember where we drove this family to, as it all started to become a blur, driving one family after another after another. Along with other American volunteers, we delivered this bike to this young woman, as well as a washing machine to one of the refugee centers. And we delivered food and supplies to this refugee center, which was about half hour north of Krakow. With the first refugee center that we were serving at shut down, we now started teaching English classes at 2 different refugee centers. At one of those refugee centers, which was an old abandoned hospital, my classroom was outside. We also bought a few $100s worth of ice cream and handed it out to the displaced persons. We did that about half a dozen times. We also had the chance to meet 5 deaf Ukrainians and converse with them between American Sign Language and Ukrainian Sign Language. You can see in this picture the living conditions there in the refugee center. And here's another picture of a refugee center in the city of Lviv. The day before we flew out, we drove these 2 American volunteers to the Ukrainian border. From there, they went to serve in Kyiv and Dnipro. One of them needed a coat, so I gave him my coat. That's some of the service that we did in Europe. Some of the other service that we did included giving people cell phones, giving them rides to various different places. My daughter spent the last of her savings to give a young Ukrainian boy a laptop so he could attend school remotely, and just basically trying to give people a sense of hope. One of the more useful things we were able to do, other than teach English class, was to connect other volunteers over there with each other. To summarize our humanitarian service on this trip, we delivered aid to 3 different refugee centers in Krakow, Poland, and to 3 different refugee centers in Ukraine. We partnered with the non-profit organization Hope Across Borders. We also helped out at a volunteer center in Ukraine and met with members of the deaf community in Ukraine, who helped us better understand how the war is impacting the deaf community and Ukrainian Sign Language. We also toured a school for the deaf and went back and delivered more food to 3 refugee centers. We also gave out some cash directly to Ukrainian refugees to help with things such as housing, and we helped a Ukrainian family move. Seeing the death and suffering that Putin is causing in Ukraine, how can we not help these people?
Кумасенька, твой дом сносят. Жесть, конечно, просто. Вот он. Этот стоит. Вот он твой ломает уже твои квартиры. Нет, ближе боюсь подойти, потому что сыпется.
As the Danish defense minister has said, Ukraine's fight is our fight. Make no mistake, Putin is a modern day Hitler, and ceding land to him will only embolden him to go after more and more territory. If Ukraine loses this war, Poland and the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia will be next. And because they are NATO members, the United States would then be obligated by treaty to respond militarily. Basically, World War III. Similarly, if Ukraine loses this war, the Chinese Communist government will be emboldened to invade Taiwan. Right now is the time to send Ukraine the help it needs. Now, of course, I'm not talking about delivering weapons with the service that I am bringing over. I'm talking about delivering humanitarian aid. But when you talk about the tooth and tail of fighting a war, you know, the tooth being the soldiers on the front line and the tail being all the people who support that effort, I understand that I am very much in the tail of this effort, but every little bit helps towards defending freedom in Ukraine. Even if you can just donate a little bit to this fundraiser, the Ukrainian people, through their tenacity and courage, have fought Russia into a stalemate on the battlefield, but they will need our assistance for an outright victory in this war. Russia does not currently have the capacity to take on NATO, which means right now is our opportunity to send Ukraine the aid it needs to win this war outright. Just as our forebears before us changed the course of world history in World War II and later in the Cold War, this is our moment. This is our opportunity to change the course of world history by helping Ukraine. Stand for freedom. Stand with Ukraine.